Welcome back to Into the Weeds. Today we are talking about the blow up between Monarez. Is that the correct pronunciation? Monarez?
Yeah, I think it's Monarez.
Monarez and RFK at the CDC, and just kind of the general lack of understanding I think that people have about what's happening in this very important agency. The CDC, obviously, Center for Disease Control, is in charge of immunization policy, and RFK has made it clear that he wants to alter certain policies as far as immunizations go, and this has led to a big dust up. Now you've got a lot of people on each side, with accusations and recriminations. My What I'd like to start with, Phil, is do you know, have you done any looking into what they are actually disagreeing about?
I know. Well, it depends on who you believe, right? So, um, Robert Kennedy Jr., Secretary Kennedy, went before the Finance Committee I believe, the Senate, and he was talking about this was after Dr. Moranis was fired. Um, and essentially, he was being grilled, obviously, by the Democrats on why she was fired, right? And he gave his testimony, and then afterwards, in front of the Help Committee in the Senate, um, uh, Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, but they just call it the Help Committee in the Senate. Um, Dr. Moranis and Dr. Ori testified as to what happened, and they had very different stories about what led to her departure.
Hmm.
And so that's what originally got it onto my radar. And what's interesting for people who haven't been following this really closely is the Senate recently changed the CDC to the director of the CDC to be a Senate confirmed position. It didn't used to be a position that was required Senate confirmation. The president
Hmm.
would just nominate somebody, and that person would become the head of the CDC. But after the
Right.
pandemic and sort of people realizing how significant this agency was, um, and the important work it did, and how important it was to function properly, that they changed it and made it a Senate approved position. And so when Dr. Moranis went before the Senate, first the committee and then ultimately a vote in the full Senate, every Republican supported her,
Hmm.
every Democrat opposed her,
Hmm.
right? Then ultimately, when she was fired, we'll talk about the discrepancies. The Democrats were defending her, and the Republicans were not. And so it was a classic example of everybody switching
Right. The old
sides
dipsy
on this,
doodle.
the old dipsy doodle. So the first thing I did is I went and I looked at her confirmation hearing. Like, why did all of the Democrats vote against her? What was
Mhm.
their concern? And I had a little inkling of it because Senator Keene had said something. But essentially, when they were questioning her, they were essentially grilling her on basically um, uh, her views on vaccines. She made it perfectly clear she thought vaccines were safe and effective. Um, there was a lot of concern over the vaccine advisory committee. Secretary Kennedy had fired everybody and replaced everybody with new people, something that had never happened before. So they were concerned about that. They were concerned about budget cuts that had happened, um, and whether we were prepared for a future pandemic or some sort of outbreak. And so they were very skeptical of her. And from reading the transcripts and the way they responded, basically what it made it sound like they would ask her a question, like I forgot which senator asked it, said, if the president gave you a directive that asked you to violate the law, would you do it? And she said, I will always follow the law.
Mhm.
But then, which would have been fine for the Democrats, but then she qualified that by saying, but I don't anticipate the president asking me to do anything illegal,
Mhm.
right? Um, was she open to the vaccine schedule being changed? And she said, I'll look at the data. She wouldn't just say no. So I think the Democrats essentially said that they didn't trust that she would be independent.
Mhm.
The Republicans liked her. Nobody attacked her on her credentials, which is kind of interesting because she actually isn't like a virologist or a physician of that sort. Her area of emphasis was like sort of terrorist attacks and national security. That's where her expertise was. But she's obviously been in the government and knows how to work within agencies. She's held some prominent positions. So first, uh, Senator Kennedy was asked why she was fired. And according to his testimony, what he said was basically, I
Who's his
asked her,
testimony?
for me, Kennedy's.
Oh, Kennedy's testimony. Okay.
Kennedy said, and by the way, neither one of them were under oath. And the reason I knew that Kennedy wasn't under oath when Dr. Monarez and Dr. Corey went to testify. The committee chairman, whose name is escaping me, he's a doctor. Damn it, from Louisiana. Anyways, it'll come to me later on. Um, uh, Somebody made a motion to swear them in. Bernie Sanders, who's the ranking member, objected to that on the grounds that Kennedy wasn't sworn in, and so it would be
Mhm.
unfair for Morales and Hori to be sworn in. I personally thought it was a bad idea because the reality is lying before Congress is illegal anyways, and so they both were required to tell the truth. So here's what
Mhm.
Kennedy told the Finance Committee. Kennedy told the senators that her departure boiled down to trust and then alignment with the president's issues.
Mhm.
He claimed that she told him that she was not trustworthy. The way he said it, he said, I asked her if she was trustworthy, and she said no, which left
Mhm.
him no choice to remove her. And then he also pushed back on the idea that he'd asked her to sign off on vaccine recommendations without any evidence. So, in his version, this wasn't about politics or science being compromised.
Mhm.
This was about a leader who'd lost confidence in somebody working underneath him. I found that testimony troubling. It doesn't sound like that's the way it
Yeah,
happened.
that sounds weird. To
Huh,
ask someone if they're trustworthy and the person responds no,
right.
um, that doesn't sound
So
like
that did
something that a human being would say, right? That's
exactly. It just didn't pass the smell test to me.
right,
Okay.
right.
And so when they
So
asked,
I wonder what he meant by that. Has he gone back and talked about that statement, like what he meant by that?
as he was pressed on it
Mhm.
repeatedly by the Democrats.
Right. I
Um,
remember he said something cute,
yeah, it was
offhanded
weird. It
about
was
it.
just like I think you said it right. People don't talk like that,
Right.
right? And when she was originally nominated, he was the one who spoke on her behalf and talked about her scientific credentials
Right.
were unimpeachable. Like he spoke high praise, didn't sway the Democrats,
No, I
but
remember, and that makes me like really curious as to what happened. I mean, it's very clear that there
well,
was some kind of falling out.
here's what she said happened. And then you can tell me whether you think the this passes a smell test. She said that Kennedy ordered her to pre-approve the vaccine recommendations made by the ACIP ahead of time, regardless of the evidence, and that he wanted her to fire seasoned CDC staff without cause. She said she refused. She wouldn't do it. She's not going to pre-approve anything without seeing evidence. Good for her. And so he told her to resign. And what she said is she told him, if you don't trust me, you can fire me, but I'm not resigning. And
Mhm.
so she said she was pushed out because she stood firm on scientific integrity. Um, and that's what happened.
Mhm.
Just based on her and the really weird part, I don't know if you saw this part of it. At one point, the senator from Oklahoma, Senator Mullen, um, he basically called her a liar. He
Mhm.
said she was lying. And he said that there was a recording of the conversation. He said, "You're lying. You know you're lying, right? Why don't you tell us the truth? Because if you lie about this one thing, then I can't believe anything you say,
Hmm.
right? Because it means you're not a trustworthy person." And so he said that it was recorded. Um,
But it wasn't
she
really recorded.
It was not. Well, what happened is at the end of the meeting, the chairman went ahead and read like a news report that had come out over the duration of the hearing, saying that he was mistaken and that there was no recording. Because, God, did you look up the name of the chairman of the health committee?
That's
It's
so
driving me
weird.
crazy. I can see him,
Uh,
Senator
the,
Cassidy.
okay.
Senator Cassidy. So Senator Cassidy, he was he was really bothered by this because he was saying, look, first, if there was a recording, why would Senator Mullen be the only one to get one? That should be distributed to everybody on the committee,
Okay.
right? And it clearly it wasn't. Turns out it wasn't because it wasn't recorded. And so I just kept thinking, here's a lady who was told this has been recorded. He's calling her a liar,
Hmm.
like straight to her face, like just saying, "You're not
Hmm.
telling the truth. You're not telling the truth." And she's sticking to her story, like without any kind of, she wasn't giving any ground, she wasn't modifying anything. And so I can just tell you that for me, I walked away from that thinking, I believe what she says. Her
Hmm.
story, the way she described it makes sense. The way that is how human beings talk.
Right. Right.
Um, and this is a woman who is a professional. She's got a PhD,
Hmm.
um, who takes science very seriously, I'm assuming, and who wasn't going to do anything that wasn't grounded in science.
Hmm.
So she resigned. Dr. Ori resigned, and then three other
So she
people
did.
from.
She did end up resigning.
No, he
Monarez.
fired her. He
Okay.
fired her, and then four other people resigned
Okay.
out of protest for what they felt was ideology taking precedence um, over science. And so three different people, Dr. Ori testified before the help committee with Dr. Monarez. Three other people had been on the news. Two of them were on the news a little bit more. One of them sort of had like a more she was like less of a public figure, more like involved in data analysis and
Hmm.
collection. So she wasn't somebody that was interviewed a lot. But it wound up being that altogether she got fired, and then four other people resigned from the CDC out of protest for what had happened
Hmm.
to Dr. Morans.
Okay.
Right.
So, um, so I mean, do you think that there are any broader implications going forward? Do we have a new head of the CDC at this point?
Uh, I don't think so. So I don't know who was. I think somebody was named as acting head, and I don't know who it is. And now the Donald Trump did an announcement earlier today saying that they had figured out what causes autism, and they've decided that acetaminophen taken during pregnancy is the cause.
Hmm.
Um, from the scientific journals that I've seen cited and from the scientific organizations that do this, they are pushing back really hard on this.
Hmm.
To me, it looks like ideology um, driving policy decisions, not science, and that deeply concerns me.
Sure.
Anytime, right?
No, I get that. I get that.
Yeah.
And acetaminophen, that's news to me. That's news to
And then
me.
the other thing too is that
Is there a study
it,
that's backing that up?
there are studies that show there's an association,
Right.
right?
But
But
correlation is not causation. Understood.
correlation is not causation. And when you're talking about something that's got genetic components to it, it winds up being that any analysis is going to be multifactorial. It's not going to be, oh, this causes autism,
Right.
right? And so to me, this is Kennedy's thing. And so he's now using the authority, the statutory authority he has as Secretary of Health and Human Services to implement his policy. And
His thing is what now?
pardon?
Autism is his thing?
Um, Autism is one of them because he's talked about the fact that it's the incidence of autism being diagnosed has dramatically increased, and so he's convinced that something is causing that.
Hmm.
I've heard a lot of physicians and researchers say that what's happened is we've actually gotten better at diagnosing
Hmm.
autism. And so the increase in identifying autism has to do with our ability to better identify it. And so
Hmm.
that's the core of the disagreement. But the idea that the idea that the federal government is going to encourage people not to take acetaminophen during pregnancy, I think is deeply problematic. To make a for me as a scientist to make a claim like that, I want to see substantial evidence. If we're going to break
Hmm.
with past policy, I want to see study after study after study. The Trump administration has not been in long enough, and not enough studies could possibly have been commissioned to look at this longitudinally
Hmm.
to make that kind of determination.
I so
Go ahead.
what I would say is I agree with you as far as studies are concerned, but
Mhm.
data is available. We do have historical medical data going back a number of years, and so
Right.
if you
So
can start to tease out,
the
if you can,
studies are inconclusive. From the stuff that I've seen reported, the studies are inconclusive. And again, that's what I said. Some of them point to an association, but as you rightly said, correlation is not
right,
causation. And especially the idea is that the causes of autism are undoubtedly
of
multifactorial. So
course,
if, right,
I don't think anybody who has more than just a passing understanding would disagree with that, right?
okay,
So
right,
yeah,
I agree.
sure, 100%.
Except Robert, except Robert Kennedy Jr. apparently.
Well, I don't know what his official position is on
Well,
autism.
that was Donald Trump's announcement.
Okay, well,
Was that um, was that
he's gonna fight autism.
acetaminophen? Say, yeah, he's found the cause of autism. For people listening who like you might be wondering like, well, this sounds crazy. It would be like somebody going ahead and saying they found the cause of cancer and then identifying aspirin as something like that. There have been studies. Jubal's right. There have been studies. They've been inconclusive. To me, um, I don't want policymakers making decisions based on ideology. I want scientists to present information to the policymakers, and then the policymakers make a decision based on the science. We don't necessarily want scientists making policy, but we want them to be providing the data that people
Mhm.
have to make those policy decisions, and
Okay.
that to me is deeply problematic. So, and along with apparently there was a vote on whether or not to uh, continue to give the hepatitis B shot for
Mhm.
infants, and this was
Sure.
one of the apparently there was disagreement among the panel.
There are multiple things that I think that Kennedy is calling into question, and I don't think it's inappropriate for him to do that. I would tend to say, yeah, okay, so hepatitis B shots, if the mother is negative for hepatitis B, do you really need to hit the baby? I mean, my understanding is that the hepatitis B immunization is injected at birth, essentially,
Day one.
right? So, is it really necessary to challenge a newborn baby's immune system that much if the mother is negative for hepatitis B?
If you believe, I would recommend anybody who is wondering about this to listen to the closing remarks of the help committee hearing and listen to Senator Cassidy, who is a doctor, and this was his specialty,
Hmm.
speaking passionately about the value of um, the day one uh, hep, hepatitis B shot from
Hmm.
his own experience prior to that shot being given and afterwards, one of the things he pointed out is that things can be transmitted um, as the baby's going through the vaginal canal, and
Hmm.
that he was there was no gray area for him as an
Hmm.
expert on whether the value of this shot. He was quite passionate about it.
Of course, as he should
So
be,
I recommend everybody.
as an advocate of that process. Of course, he is going to be. Are there
Right.
any potential negative effects for giving a newborn baby a
I think
hepatitis B
in
shot?
any of those things there are negative effects, right? There are
Potentially,
always
potential negative
potential,
effects.
and then and they will pop up. Just like anybody who's watched these commercials for the drugs that they sell, and
Right,
they'll list all of the potential drawbacks, and
right. May cause
I've
you to see
always
purple spots for the rest of your life. Yeah, it's
right.
weird, right? It's
The
weird.
ones that get me will say it could cause constipation or diarrhea. I'm like, those are the opposite. How can it cause those? But in any case, um, he was adamant. He was
Sure.
adamant and deeply passionate. So once again, I worry, and I think he worried that that
I
was
think the worry is, and it's a founded worry. The worry is that if it becomes kind of chic or cool to like not immunize your kids, once you get under a certain level of immunization, you dramatically increase the risk of diseases which are far more lethal than obviously than the immunizations themselves. And I think again, I think a reasonable person who looks at the issue is going to say, yeah, that makes sense. But I also think that looking at the immunization schedule and saying, hey, maybe we don't need to load up three immunizations at once at a particular time, even though that might be. And again, I'm not an immunologist, but I'm just saying that there's more than one way of looking at these things. There's a lot of science on the issues of immunization. They point in a lot of different directions. What's the best way, in your estimation, what is the best way moving forward to make sure that we take the most appropriate path?
so to me, and we've mentioned this repeatedly in these podcasts. I'm an institutionalist. I am.
Mm.
I believe that the American Pediatric Association, the American AMA, all these
Mhm.
organizations are concerned about the well-being of their patients. I want the experts to make the decisions. Now, I agree with Jubal in that I don't think there's any problem whatsoever in raising questions. That's what scientists should always be doing,
Mhm.
questioning their assumptions, right?
Mhm.
But if you're going to make a dramatic change in policy, then
Mhm.
it should be driven by the data. It should be driven by the experts. One of the things that I found particularly troubling during the hearing on the help committee is that one of the things that Dr. Ori said is that typically the way it works is when CDC is making a decision, what'll happen is they'll go in and they'll the experts will provide background information to the policy people, right? So the experts come in, they lay out what the data says to the policy people, and the policy people make that decision. What she said is that the normal process of going ahead and having the experts come in and provide data to the political appointees, that was circumvented. Her position was, and she said this um, under in her testimony, was that the CDC's science was suppressed and altered, and science and Kennedy wasn't allowing the scientists to speak or publish the data that they have, speak or to the policymakers or publish the data they have through the usual channels. Now that makes sense because Kennedy thinks it's a corrupt organization, but for her and for a lot of the other people who
He
resigned,
thinks the CDC is a corrupt organization?
yeah, absolutely. He thinks
Okay.
everybody there is bought and sold by the pharmaceutical industry,
Mhm.
right? So that was one of the in the
Well, the
um,
pharmaceutical industry certainly has influence.
right. I think that was one of the things that set off, and it's not hard to set off Senator
Mhm.
Sanders, but one of the things that set off Senator Sanders in the Finance Committee, he started yelling. This might surprise people. He started yelling and he said, everybody on this in this hearing takes money from the pharmaceutical industry.
Mhm.
Everyone, right? Are you saying that everybody here, both sides of the aisle, they're all corrupt? Everyone except you, right? And he talked about how he had gotten money from people who were involved in this. I have a financial stake in all of this. So that seems to be Kennedy's um, take on the CDC. And so, um,
So I think I think actually we're kind of in agreement in the sense that, as you said before, asking questions is always a good thing, right?
100%.
The whole point of science is that the argument is never over, right? So asking questions, yes, very good. Demanding data, demanding that we look at appropriate kinds of data, all data, whatever data can be made available. Yeah, that's all good. Suppressing data would be the opposite of that, right?
Right.
So if he's actively telling people that they cannot release certain kinds of data, I think that's damning. So that's something we should certainly look into. But if he's asking pharmaceutical companies to put up or shut up, I don't have a problem with him saying that, right?
Right.
I think we should all kind of support that.
Right. Right.
And so
By
there's
the way, I'm not one of these people who thinks that the pharmaceutical industry is this terrible thing, because if it wasn't for the
no,
pharmaceutical industry having come up with a particular drug called Keppra, I would not be able to lead a normal life. I would be having seizures on the
I
hour.
I don't think anybody,
Absolutely.
I don't think
Right.
any person who lives on the grid is going to go so far as to say that pharmaceutical companies are evil. I don't think that's the case. But pharmaceutical companies certainly pursue their own interests, as they're expected to do, right? So, and their
Sure.
interests may not align perfectly with the interests of health and human beings. And I think maybe that's what Kennedy is trying to establish. I also know he's trying to push for changes in the way the COVID vaccine is being put out. He's getting a lot of pushback on that, and so there's more going on here than just his
Right.
fight with Monarez. Like there's a great deal of things I feel like broiling under or boiling under the surface.
Right.
Um,
I was a little bit troubled because I felt like he was deceptive when he was talking about the COVID vaccine, because he was saying we're just changing the recommendation. We're not telling people that they can't get the COVID vaccine if they want to. The
mhm,
problem is if the CDC recommends the the COVID vaccine for certain groups of people, then the insurance companies have to provide it free of
mhm,
charge. And
mhm.
so, what essentially, if they decided to pull the vaccine, the recommendation of the vaccine, yes,
Then you'd have to
people
pay
could
for
buy
it.
it, but then you'd have to pay for it. And then what that winds up meaning is that people who want it and can afford it will get it, but poor people who can't won't. And that's deeply problematic. But once again, all of the decisions should be driven by the science, not
Mhm.
by policy, not by ideology.
Right.
That's
So maybe the best step here, what we do, because I don't think that you and I disagree as far as technique is concerned. Maybe the best thing to do here is to wait until the actual new recommendations come out and see what is actually changed. And then if there's science backing up the actual changes, I feel like we'll get a much more clear picture. I also feel like the testimony that I've heard doesn't make sense. Like clearly to ask somebody whether or not they're trustworthy and have them answer no, that's a weird thing to say, Bobby. Come on. Like it's I think you could do better than that. Um, but then for Cassidy to say, I know you're lying and to call her out on it, it's like that's a pretty serious accusation too.
oh yeah, it was really weird. It
To
was like
say to
it was like
her, I know that you're lying, like does he? Does he actually know that she's lying or is he just making stuff up?
I mean,
So,
apparently he's making stuff up because he was in the committee room
uh
when he went ahead, and it was reported on some news outlet
it just
that
seems
there
like a
was no
really irresponsible thing for a senator to say
completely.
that
And to
I
me,
know you are lying and to not actually know that they're lying, right?
right. And then to me, if you do something like that, uh, have the guts to come back in the room
Mhm.
and apologize and say, you know what,
Yeah, if you made a
Dr.
mistake,
Moranis, I went
yeah.
ahead, I went ahead and said something I was told that there was a recording and that what you're testifying
Sure.
to was not true. I was mistaken and I apologize.
Mhm.
Or release a public statement that
To that
makes that
effect.
clear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
So
don't think that that's what he did.
I will be interested to see what develops. I don't doubt that Robert Kennedy has different ideas about what constitutes good health policy than a
Correct.
lot of people that are at the CDC. But I also don't doubt that Robert Kennedy really does want to improve the health of average Americans and of young people. Let's all just try to work together to make sure everybody's on the same page and everybody's using the resources in the right way. I think that's the best that we can hope for. Any last word from
Agreed.
you on this topic?
Just that and I'm not a fan of his when people are going when a decision needs to be made or articulated about changes in CDC recommendations, Donald Trump shouldn't be the one making the announcement.
Yeah, that's probably a
Right,
good call.
right. He
Don't
just
take
shouldn't.
Tylenol if you're pregnant. That's his advice. I don't
Right,
know.
right.
Maybe they'll back it up. Maybe something's coming out. We'll see. I don't know. I'm not banking on it, but we might have something. We'll see.
Neither am I.
All right. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you next time around.